I still remember the moment the mansion gates swung open. Tall, black iron bars covered with autumn leaves, whispering in the cold morning breeze. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I looked up at the enormous estate before me. I had worked in many homes as a nanny, but never one like this. I took a deep breath. "It's just another job, Emma," I whispered to myself. But something deep in my heart told me it wasn't. The mansion belonged to Alexander Reed, one of the country's youngest self-made millionaires, a man rumored to be brilliant, cold, and utterly broken. He had lost his wife 2 years ago in a car accident, leaving him alone with 3 children, triplets, who were said to be gravely ill. I had only seen their picture once. 3 tiny, pale faces with shaved heads, sitting quietly in a hospital bed. The agency had told me little except that they needed special care and that the previous 5 nannies had all quit within weeks. I told myself I wouldn't. When the butler, Mr. Haynes, opened the door, his eyes looked weary, as if sleep had long forgotten him. "You must be Miss Carter," he said quietly. "Mr. Reed is in his office. The children are upstairs." Inside, the house felt like a museum, silent, polished, cold. The ticking of an old grandfather clock echoed down the marble hall. There were no toys, no laughter, no sign that 3 children lived here. Mr. Haynes led me up the staircase, past portraits of Alexander and his late wife. In one, she was holding the babies, 3 identical bundles of joy, wrapped in pastel blankets. My heart clenched. When we reached the nursery door, Mr. Haynes hesitated. "Before you go in," he murmured, "I should tell you, they've stopped eating properly. The doctors say there's nothing more to be done." My heart sank. "What do you mean, nothing more?" I asked. He looked away. "You'll see." The door creaked open, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. 3 small beds stood in a row near the window, each with white sheets tucked tight. Sunlight spilled over their bald heads and tiny hands. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and lavender. The children turned their faces toward me slowly. Their eyes were the same piercing blue, like Alexander's, but dull, tired. "Hello," I whispered softly. "I'm Emma. I'll be taking care of you from now on." The eldest, Liam, stared at me without speaking. The middle one, Lila, gave a faint nod. The youngest, Leo, clutched a stuffed bear so tight his knuckles turned white. Their silence said more than words ever could. I sat on the edge of the bed and smiled. "Do you like stories?" No response. But when I began softly, "Once upon a time, there were 3 brave little heroes." Lila's eyes lifted, just a little. That was enough for me. Hours later, I met Alexander Reed in his office. He was nothing like I expected. Not just handsome in a distant corporate way. He looked exhausted, haunted. His tie hung loose, his sleeves rolled up, papers scattered across the mahogany desk. When he looked up, his voice was low and rough. "Miss Carter, thank you for coming. You'll find the children complicated." "I've cared for complicated children before," I said gently. He gave a bitter smile. "Not like this." He handed me a folder. Inside were medical reports, pages filled with red stamps and impossible words. Neurodegenerative disorder, terminal, 1-week prognosis. My breath caught. 1 week? He nodded. The doctors in Switzerland confirmed it yesterday. I brought them home so they can be comfortable. I looked up at him. "You've given up?" His jaw tightened. "There's nothing left to fight for." Something inside me burned at those words. I'd seen children heal when everyone gave up, because someone didn't. So I said quietly, "Then maybe it's time someone did the impossible." He looked at me for a long moment, then turned away. "Dinner is at 7, he said, ending the conversation. That night, I couldn't sleep. The children's weak breathing haunted the silence of the mansion. I crept into the kitchen, searching for something, anything that could help. Fresh fruit, honey, milk. I warmed the milk, stirred in honey, and carried it upstairs. When I stepped into the nursery, Leo was awake, coughing softly. "Shh," I whispered, sitting beside him. "It's okay, sweetheart. Try a little of this." He turned his head weakly. "It hurts." "I know," I said, holding the cup to his lips. "Just a sip." He drank, then looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. "Mommy used to make this." My throat tightened. "She still loves you," I whispered, "and so will I, if you let me." He fell asleep with a faint smile. Over the next few days, I learned the truth behind their silence. Liam, the eldest, had once been talkative, curious, always protecting his siblings. Now he barely spoke. Lila drew pictures silently, angels, clouds, stars, and hid them under her pillow. Leo never let go of his bear, as if it still carried their mother's scent. They weren't just sick, they were grieving. No medicine could heal that. I decided I wouldn't let their last week be filled with sadness. The next morning, I opened the curtains wide and said, "We're going to make the most beautiful day ever." Lila frowned. "But we can't go outside." "Who said we can't?" I smiled. "We have a garden, don't we?" That was how it began. 3 fragile children in coats too big for them, stepping out into sunlight for the first time in months. They squinted, giggled softly, held each other's hands. I showed them how to blow bubbles, how to plant seeds in the soil, how to listen to the wind. For a moment, they forgot about being sick. From the balcony above, I saw Alexander watching silently. His eyes softened, just for a second. That night I baked a small rainbow cake, the first color in this gray house. When I brought it to their table, the children gasped. "It looks like magic," Lila whispered. "It tastes like it too," I smiled. They each took a bite, small and careful. For the first time, laughter filled the room. When I looked up, Alexander was standing in the doorway. His eyes glistened. "Miss Carter," he said quietly. "They haven't smiled in months." I wiped my hands. Sometimes hope begins with a single bite of cake. He almost smiled. But then his phone rang. His expression darkened. He stepped outside to take the call. Through the half-open door, I heard fragments, words that chilled me. Condition worsening. 1 week might be optimistic. Prepare for... I turned away quickly, before he saw the tears in my eyes. That night, I sat beside the children's beds, holding their tiny hands. I whispered a prayer into the quiet room. "Dear God, if there's even a spark of life left in them, show me how to save them." And somewhere deep in the silence, I felt it. A faint warmth, like a whisper in my heart. Maybe it wasn't over yet. The next morning, I woke to the sound of soft rain tapping against the windows. The mansion felt different, quieter, heavier, like it was holding its breath. The triplets were still asleep when I went downstairs. The kitchen staff whispered among themselves. I heard bits of their murmurs. Poor children. "A week," they said. "Mr. Reed hasn't left his office all night." I poured myself a cup of coffee and gazed out the window. My mind wouldn't stop racing. There had to be something, some reason behind this illness no one could explain. I couldn't just accept it, not without understanding it. Later that day, while the children napped, I found myself drawn toward the late Mrs. Reed's old study. It had been locked since her death, but the key still hung from a tiny brass hook in the hallway. When I pushed the door open, the smell of lavender filled the air, a soft, haunting reminder of her presence. Dusty shelves lined the walls, filled with journals, photo albums, and children's drawings taped with care. On her desk, I noticed a worn leather diary with a ribbon marking the last page she wrote. I hesitated, then whispered, "Forgive me," and opened it. The first few pages were gentle, entries about the triplets' first steps. Their first words, her love for Alexander. But then her handwriting changed. It grew frantic, uneven. The children's fevers return every night. The doctors can't explain it. I feel something's wrong, something deeper. I've begun keeping notes on their food, their reactions, their moods. There's a pattern I can't ignore, a pattern. I flipped further. They only worsen after the injections from Dr. Feldman. I've asked Alex to stop them, but he insists they're experimental treatments for immunity. The children cry every time. I froze. Dr. Feldman, wasn't he the same physician still handling their case now? The next line sent a chill through me. If anyone finds this and I'm gone, please, look in the nursery's music box. My heart pounded. I looked up toward the ceiling, toward the room directly above. When I entered the nursery again, the children were awake. Lila sat drawing quietly. Liam was trying to read, though his little hands shook. "Can I hear music?" Leo asked suddenly. I blinked. "Music?" He pointed to the corner shelf, a pink music box shaped like a carousel. "Mommy used to play it before bed. Daddy stopped it after..." He trailed off. I walked over, lifted the box carefully, and turned the tiny silver key. A soft lullaby filled the room, sweet, delicate, familiar. The triplets closed their eyes, smiling faintly. But as the melody played, I noticed something odd. The bottom felt heavier than it should. I turned it over and found a hidden latch. Inside was a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. I unfolded it with trembling fingers. "If you're reading this and my children are still sick, please trust your instincts. They are not dying from disease. They are being poisoned slowly by what's meant to save them." The words blurred before my eyes. Poisoned. I gasped, clutching the paper. I read it again, over and over, unable to believe it. Could it be true? Were the injections harming them instead of helping? That evening, I waited until Alexander came home. He looked exhausted, his tie loosened, his hair slightly damp from the rain. "Mr. Reed," I said, trying to steady my voice, "I need to talk to you about your children's medication." He frowned. "What about it?" "I found something. In your late wife's diary." His eyes darkened immediately. "You went through her things?" "I had to," I said softly. "She left a message about Dr. Feldman's injections. She believed they were hurting the children." His jaw tightened. "That's absurd. Feldman's one of the best neurologists in the world. Those injections are their only hope." "Then why are they getting worse?" I demanded. "Why do they cry every time they get them?" He turned away, gripping the edge of his desk. "Because they're sick, Miss Carter. Because sometimes hope hurts." I stepped closer. "Or because someone doesn't want them to get better." He spun around, anger flashing in his eyes, but behind that, I saw fear. "Leave it alone," he said quietly. "That's an order," but I couldn't. That night, I couldn't shake the image of Mrs. Reed's handwriting, the desperation, the love in every stroke of her pen. If she was right, the children didn't have 1 week to live. They had 1 week before the poison consumed them completely. And if that was true, Dr. Feldman was hiding something. The next morning, I called the hospital pretending to confirm their next appointment. The nurse on the line hesitated. "Oh, Dr. Feldman canceled this week's session. Said he'll come to the mansion personally instead." "When?" I asked. "Tomorrow morning." I hung up slowly. Whatever was happening, it was coming here. That afternoon, while the children napped again, I sat beside their beds, holding the diary in my lap. "Your mother was so brave," I whispered to them. "And she's still helping us." Lila stirred slightly. "Mommy said she'd always protect us." "She still is," I said softly. "And so will I." Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. I could feel it. Something big was coming. That night, I walked into the library to return the diary, but found Alexander there, sitting in the dark. The glow from the fireplace flickered across his face. He spoke without looking up. "You really think someone's poisoning my children?" "Yes," I said firmly. "And I think your wife found out before she died." His shoulders tensed. "What exactly are you suggesting?" I hesitated. Then quietly I asked, "Was her death really an accident?" He froze. The fire crackled loudly in the silence. After a long pause, he whispered, "She died driving back from the hospital." Feldman called her that day. She was upset. I never knew why. I placed the diary gently on the table in front of him. Now you do. He stared at it, his expression breaking for the first time. If you're right, he murmured, then I've been paying the man who murdered my wife and is killing my children. The next morning, the mansion was eerily still. I dressed the children, prepared breakfast, but my hands trembled the whole time. At exactly 10 o'clock, the gates opened. A sleek black car rolled in and Dr. Feldman stepped out, tall, confident, carrying his leather case. He greeted me politely, too politely. Good morning, Miss Carter. How are the little angels today? My stomach turned. Alexander appeared at the top of the stairs, his expression unreadable. Doctor, he said coolly. My study, please. As they disappeared inside, I stayed near the door, pretending to tidy up, listening. Routine dose, Feldman said. Side effects worsening, Alexander replied. That's expected at this stage, the doctor assured him. Then I heard a faint sound, a small vial clinking. My pulse raced. When Feldman left the study moments later, I saw him slip something into his coat pocket. He turned toward me and smiled. Always a pleasure, Miss Carter. Keep them comfortable. As soon as he was gone, I hurried into the office. Alexander stood at the desk, staring at the open briefcase Feldman had left behind. Inside, among the syringes, was a small unmarked bottle. I lifted it carefully. The liquid inside shimmered faintly, like oil. What is that? I asked. Alexander shook his head slowly. I don't know, but we're going to find out. That night, I sat beside the triplets again, brushing their foreheads as they slept. Outside, the rain hadn't stopped. I looked toward the heavens and whispered, If this is the fight you want me to take, God, give me strength. For the first time since I arrived, I felt a strange peace. A quiet voice in my heart said, You're not alone, and I knew, whatever came next, I would not let those children die. Not without a fight. I barely slept that night. Every sound in the mansion felt sharper. The ticking clock, the thunder outside, the faint coughs from the children's room. My mind kept circling back to that small unmarked vial. The liquid inside shimmered faintly in the lamplight. Innocent, yet somehow sinister. At dawn, I found Alexander already awake in his study. He hadn't changed clothes. His eyes were red, his tie loosened, and the diary lay open before him. I called an independent lab, he said hoarsely. They'll send someone to collect the sample this morning, quietly. Good, I whispered. We'll know the truth soon. He looked up at me then, not as an employer, but as a father fighting to hold himself together. Miss Carter, he began, but his voice cracked. He cleared his throat. If it's true, if he's been hurting them. I stepped closer. Then we'll stop him, together. He nodded once, his jaw tightening. Around 9, a discreet knock came at the back door. A woman entered, mid-40s, sharp eyes, lab coat under a raincoat. Dr. Nora Allen, she introduced herself softly. You said it was urgent. Alexander handed her the vial. We need a full toxicology test, discreetly. No records under our names. She studied it under the light. This doesn't look like any pharmaceutical compound I recognize. I'll run it immediately. You'll have results by tonight. Tonight, Alexander repeated quietly. Thank you. When she left, he collapsed into the chair, burying his face in his hands. For the first time, I saw tears slip between his fingers. Alexander, I said gently. He looked up, eyes full of grief. I trusted him. Feldman was there when my wife was pregnant. He delivered the triplets. He was family. Monsters don't always wear masks, I whispered. Sometimes they wear white coats. That afternoon, I tried to distract the children. We built a blanket fort in their room. Something simple, something happy. The triplets giggled faintly as we draped sheets over chairs, stacking pillows and fairy lights. Lila lay on her stomach, drawing on the floor. What are you making? I asked. A picture, she said softly, of Mommy and Daddy and us. But this time, nobody's crying. My chest tightened. Leo, clutching his bear, whispered, Are we going to heaven soon? I froze. Why would you say that, sweetheart? He looked up at me with innocent, tired eyes. Because the doctor said we'll see Mommy soon. And Daddy was crying in his office. Tears burned behind my eyes. I took his little hand in mine. No, baby, I said firmly. You're not going anywhere. You're going to live. You're going to see the sky and eat ice cream and run in the garden again. He smiled faintly. You promise? I promise. That evening, as the sun set behind the rain clouds, a car pulled up quietly outside. Dr. Allen stepped out, her face pale and serious. She carried a folder clutched tightly in her hand. We met her in the study. The fire crackled between us, but her tone was ice cold. I tested the compound, she said. It's not a medication. It's a toxin, a synthetic neurosuppressant. Very rare, very controlled. Alexander's hand gripped the edge of the desk. Toxin? She nodded grimly. It mimics a degenerative disorder. The symptoms match exactly what your children are experiencing. Prolonged doses would lead to paralysis, organ failure, and death. My breath caught. So he's been poisoning them. Yes, Dr. Allen said. And deliberately. Whoever made this knew exactly what they were doing. Alexander's voice dropped to a whisper. Why? Dr. Allen hesitated. I traced the batch. It was custom-made, ordered under a private medical foundation. Owned by you, Mr. Reed. He froze. What? Someone has been using your name and accounts to authorize these doses, she said quietly. Someone very close to you. The folder slipped from his hands. Papers scattered across the floor. My God, he breathed. He's been using my company to kill my children. After she left, the room fell into silence. The firelight flickered across Alexander's pale face. He whispered, almost to himself. He must have done the same to her. To my wife, I knelt beside him, placing a hand over his. We can still save them. We know the truth now. He looked at me, eyes full of pain, but also something else. Determination. You're right, he said. We'll stop the treatments immediately. No more injections, no more medicine until we confirm it's safe, I nodded. And I'll find another way to help them recover. How? I took a deep breath. Your wife wrote everything down. Foods that helped, natural remedies she tried before the treatments. I can use that. I'll stay with them around the clock if I have to. Alexander stood, shoulders squared, resolve hardening in his eyes. For the first time, he said quietly, I feel like there's hope. That night, I began the impossible. I researched every ingredient Mrs. Reed mentioned, herbal teas, essential oils, natural antioxidants. I blended soft fruit smoothies for the children, mixing in vitamins and minerals. Liam, always skeptical, asked, Are you a doctor? I smiled. No, I'm something better. I care. For the first time, he laughed. A small, tired laugh, but a laugh nonetheless. Over the next 2 days, I refused to let despair in. We had sunlight breakfasts, quiet story hours, and whispered prayers before bed. Slowly, unbelievably, the children's color began to return. Their eyes brightened. Their appetite returned. Alexander noticed first. Emma, he said one morning, voice trembling. Leo stood up today, on his own. Tears filled my eyes. See? Miracles start small, he smiled faintly. You've changed this house, Miss Carter. You've changed me. But just when hope began to breathe again, the storm struck. That evening, while I was tucking the children into bed, the doorbell rang. I heard raised voices downstairs, Alexander's and another, colder one. I stepped into the hallway, heart pounding. Alexander, a familiar voice sneered. You've made a mistake canceling the treatments. It was Dr. Feldman. You were poisoning my children. Alexander shouted. Feldman's tone stayed calm. Careful with accusations. You don't understand the science. I understand betrayal. Alexander roared. You killed my wife. You almost killed my children. Get out! There was a scuffle, footsteps, something crashing. I rushed downstairs just as Feldman grabbed Alexander by the collar. You don't know what you're dealing with, Feldman hissed. They were supposed to die. My blood froze. Before I could react, I shouted, Let him go! Feldman turned toward me smirking. Ah, the nanny. The little hero. Without thinking, I grabbed the nearest object, a heavy vase, and swung. It shattered against the wall beside him, narrowly missing. He stumbled back, eyes wide with rage. You'll regret this. He stormed out into the rain, slamming the door behind him. The house fell silent except for our breathing and the distant thunder. Alexander leaned against the wall, shaking. "He'll come back," he whispered. "He won't let this go." I placed a hand on his arm. "Then we'll be ready." He looked at me. Really looked. And for the first time since I'd arrived, his eyes weren't cold or broken. They were alive. That night, as I sat beside the triplets, I watched the faint color returning to their cheeks. The soft rise and fall of their breathing felt like music. I closed my eyes and whispered, "We're not done yet. Not until you're safe." Outside, the storm raged, but inside, hope had found its flame again. The night the storm returned, the mansion felt alive. Every thunderclap shook the windows. Every flash of lightning painted the hallways in white and gold. I was in the nursery, rocking Leo gently to sleep, while Lila and Liam whispered stories under their blanket fort. Their cheeks looked rosier now, their voices a little stronger. It was working. For the first time, there was laughter, faint but real, inside these walls. And then, just as I smiled, the lights flickered. I froze. Once, twice. Then complete darkness. The triplets gasped. "It's okay," I whispered, forcing calm into my voice. Just the storm. But inside my heart began to race. Because when I looked out the window, I saw it. The faint beam of a flashlight moving through the garden. Someone was out there. Downstairs, I could hear the creak of the main door. Then muffled voices. I gently laid Leo down and whispered to the children, "Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me, understand?" Liam nodded, fear in his blue eyes. "Is it the bad doctor?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but I won't let him hurt you." I slipped out quietly, closing the door behind me. The hallway was pitch dark except for the lightning flashes through the tall windows. The air smelled of wet earth and danger. Halfway down the stairs, I saw Alexander, barefoot, holding a fire poker in one hand, his face lit by the faint glow of his phone's flashlight. "He's here," he whispered. "Security's been cut. He must have disabled the cameras. Where are the guards?" I asked. "Gone. He paid them off, or scared them away." Lightning flashed again, and for a split second, we both saw him. Dr. Feldman stood at the far end of the hall, his face ghostly pale, his coat drenched. "Alexander," his voice echoed, smooth and venomous. "You're making a mistake." Alexander stepped forward. "You tried to kill my children." Feldman's lips curled into a sneer. "Your wife should have let me finish my work. She got too curious. You're following in her footsteps." I felt my blood run cold. "She trusted you," Alexander said bitterly. "I trusted you." Feldman laughed softly. "Trust is a luxury for fools. Do you really think those children will survive without my formula? You can't undo what's been done." He reached into his coat pocket. Something glinted. "Alexander, get back." I shouted. But before Feldman could move further, Alexander lunged forward, knocking the syringe from his hand. It clattered to the floor and rolled under a chair. Feldman shoved him hard. Alexander stumbled backward, hitting the wall. I didn't think. I grabbed the vase from the side table and hurled it again, striking Feldman's shoulder. He turned toward me, fury flashing in his eyes. "You should have stayed out of this, Nanny." I backed up slowly, my heart pounding. "Someone has to protect them, since you've forgotten how to be human." Suddenly, a tiny sound broke through the chaos. A child's cry. "Leo." My blood froze. I turned to see the nursery door cracked open upstairs. Leo must have woken and come looking for me. Feldman's gaze snapped upward. "Ah, the little one. No." I screamed, racing for the stairs. He followed, quick, furious. Alexander caught his arm, but Feldman struck him hard with a glass ornament, sending him sprawling. I reached the top landing just as Feldman grabbed Leo by the arm. "Let him go." I cried. The boy whimpered, tears streaming down his pale cheeks. Feldman held up another syringe, the needle glinting wickedly in the lightning. "Do you even know what this is, Miss Carter? It's the cure and the curse. Without it, they'll die slowly. With it, instantly." I stepped forward, voice shaking. "You don't want to do this." He smiled coldly. You'd be surprised what I want. And then, the sound of heavy footsteps behind him. Alexander. Blood trickled from his temple, but his eyes blazed with fury. He swung the fire poker with all his strength. It connected with Feldman's arm. The syringe flew across the hall, shattering against the wall. Feldman screamed, staggering back. Leo ran into my arms, sobbing. "Go!" Alexander shouted. "Take them and go!" But before I could move, Feldman reached for a shard of glass and lunged. Alexander tackled him. The two crashed through a small glass table, both falling hard to the floor. For a moment, everything was chaos. Rain pounding the windows, thunder roaring, glass shattering. Then, silence. Feldman lay motionless. Alexander was breathing heavily, one hand gripping his side. "It's over," he whispered. "It's finally over." The police arrived 20 minutes later, summoned by the mansion's silent alarm. Feldman was alive but unconscious, taken away in handcuffs. As they led him out, he looked at me one last time, his lips curling into something like a smirk. "This isn't over," he murmured. But for the first time, I didn't believe him. By morning, the storm had passed. The sky outside the nursery windows glowed pale gold, washing the world clean. The triplets slept peacefully, all three holding hands. I sat beside them, exhausted but smiling through tears. When Alexander entered quietly, I stood. "They're safe," I whispered. He nodded, his voice thick. "Because of you," I shook my head. "Because of love. Yours and your wife's. It never left them." He looked down at his sleeping children, their cheeks flushed, breathing steady, and something in him broke. He sank to his knees beside their beds, tears spilling freely. "I don't deserve them," he whispered. I knelt beside him. "Then spend the rest of your life proving you do." That afternoon, the doctor called again, not Feldman, but Dr. Nora Allen. "I have good news," she said over the phone. "The compound is leaving their system naturally. Their bodies are recovering faster than I expected." "They'll live, Miss Carter." I covered my mouth, tears of relief spilling down. "Thank you, doctor." "Thank you." When I turned, Alexander was standing behind me. "They'll live?" he asked softly. I nodded. "They'll live," he exhaled shakily, his eyes glistening. And then, for the first time, he smiled. A real smile, full of life. That night, as the house finally fell quiet, I sat on the balcony watching the stars. Alexander joined me, holding 2 cups of tea. He handed me one, his voice quiet. "You know, when you first arrived, I thought you were just another nanny. I didn't know you'd become the reason my children, and I, found life again." I smiled faintly. "Maybe that's what miracles look like. They don't always come with wings. Sometimes they come with car keys and a first-day smile." He laughed softly. "And sometimes they come when you've given up on ever finding them." We sat in silence, listening to the distant sound of the children's soft breathing through the baby monitor. For the first time in years, the mansion didn't feel cold anymore. It felt like home. The first thing I noticed that morning was silence. Not the heavy, fearful kind that filled the mansion before, but a soft, peaceful quiet. The kind that makes you hold your breath so you don't disturb it. I opened my eyes slowly. The rain was gone. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, painting golden stripes across the room. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Then I heard it. Laughter, tiny, bright, unrestrained laughter echoing through the hallway. I sat up instantly, my heart pounding. When I opened the nursery door, what I saw made my knees almost give out. Lila was chasing Liam around the room, a toy plane in her hand. Leo sat on the rug, clapping and giggling, his cheeks pink and full of life. Their skin glowed with color. Their eyes sparkled. They were alive. "Good morning, Miss Carter," Lila squealed, running into my arms. Her little arms wrapped around my neck, and I could feel her heartbeat, strong, steady, perfect. I choked on a laugh and tears all at once. "Good morning, sweetheart." Liam tugged my sleeve. "Can we go outside today? The garden smells nice outside." For weeks, they hadn't even had the strength to walk down the stairs, and now they wanted to run in the sunlight. I nodded, unable to speak. "Let's go show Daddy." Leo giggled, already toddling toward the door. Downstairs, Alexander stood by the piano, looking through a folder of legal papers. His posture was tired, his hair still damp from a morning shower, but when he heard their footsteps, those joyous little footsteps, he froze. Then, slowly he turned and saw them, Lila running toward him. Arms open wide. "Daddy, look! We're all better!" Alexander dropped the papers, eyes wide, disbelief flooding his face. He dropped to his knees as the triplets tackled him, laughing, hugging, squealing. For a moment, he didn't move, just held them, as if afraid they might vanish. Then he looked up at me. His eyes were wet. "You did it," he whispered. I shook my head through my tears. No, they did. They fought their way back. He pulled all 3 children close, his voice trembling. "You brought light back into this house, Emma. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." I smiled softly. "You already have." That afternoon, Dr. Nora Allen arrived with her team to run tests. The results were more than anyone could have hoped for. "The toxins are gone," she said, her voice trembling with disbelief. "Their organs are functioning normally. Their immune systems have rebounded on their own. It's as if," she looked at me, shaking her head in awe, "as if their bodies rebooted." Alexander laughed, an unguarded, genuine laugh that filled the room. "Then let's call it what it is, a miracle," Dr. Allen smiled. "A miracle with a scientific mystery attached, but yes, a miracle." When the medical team left, the children ran into the garden, their laughter carried by the wind. I stood by the window, watching them chase butterflies, their tiny footprints marking the wet grass. For weeks, this house had been filled with grief, fear, and shadows. Now it rang with joy. "Mrs. Reed would have loved this," I whispered without thinking. Alexander turned to me slowly. "You remind me of her sometimes," I blinked. "I do," he nodded. "She had that same stubborn kindness, the kind that saves people even when it hurts. She used to believe love could heal anything. I thought it was just a dream." He looked out at the garden again, voice soft. "But now, I think she was right. That evening I sat in Mrs. Reed's old study, the one I hadn't dared enter before. Dust motes danced in the sunset light, landing on the grand mahogany desk. I opened one of the drawers, and inside, beneath a leather notebook, was a sealed envelope. My name was written on it in elegant cursive, for Emma Carter. My breath caught. Hands trembling, I opened it. Inside was a short letter. The ink was slightly faded, but the words were clear. "Dear Emma, if you're reading this, it means you've found your way into our lives, and my children's hearts. I don't know who you are or how you arrived, but something tells me you're exactly who they needed. Please don't lose hope, no matter how dark things get. The children's illness isn't just a curse. It's a test of faith, love, and courage. If anyone can break it, it's someone who truly believes in them. And if you ever doubt yourself, remember this. You were meant to be here. With love, Grace Reed." By the time I finished reading, my tears had blurred the ink. Meant to be here. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about saving 3 children. It was about saving a family. And maybe saving myself too. That night, after the children fell asleep, I found Alexander standing alone in the garden under the stars. He looked up as I approached. His face calm, but his eyes full of things he couldn't say. "She wrote to you, didn't she?" he asked softly. I nodded. "She believed in something I didn't even know was possible." He smiled faintly. Grace had a way of seeing people before they saw themselves. The wind moved gently through the trees. The moonlight touched his face, and for a fleeting moment, I saw not the broken man who'd lost everything, but the father who'd found a reason to live again. He looked at me and whispered, "Thank you for bringing her light back to us." I swallowed hard, meeting his gaze. "She never left, Alexander. She just needed someone to remind you." Later that night, I stood by the nursery window. The triplets were sleeping peacefully, their chests rising and falling in perfect rhythm. In that moment, I felt something shift deep inside me, a quiet certainty that fate had placed me here for a reason far greater than I could understand. Outside, the sky shimmered with stars, and somewhere in that vast, glittering darkness, I felt Grace's presence, soft, warm and smiling. A week passed. The mansion, once filled with quiet sorrow, now pulsed with laughter. The triplets were healthy, running through the gardens, painting on the kitchen floor, singing out of tune with the morning birds. The staff had returned. The windows were open. Life had come back. And yet, a soft ache remained inside me. Because every story, no matter how miraculous, comes to a crossroads, the moment where love must decide whether to stay or let go. One morning, as I was helping Lila with her shoes, a courier arrived at the mansion gates. Alexander called me to his study. He stood by the desk, holding a thick envelope stamped with gold ink. "What is it?" I asked. He looked at me strangely, half smiling, half nervous. "It's something I've been working on quietly since the night of the storm." He handed me the envelope. "Read it." I opened it carefully. Inside were legal documents and a letter. My eyes widened as I read the first line. Official adoption and guardianship confirmation, Emma Carter. I froze. "Alexander, what is this?" He stepped closer, his voice gentle but steady. "It means that if anything ever happens to me, the children will have someone they trust, someone who's already fought for them harder than anyone else ever did." Tears blurred my vision. "You don't have to do this." "I want to," he said softly. "Emma, you saved their lives. You brought this family back from the dead. I can't imagine them growing up without you." I shook my head, my voice trembling. "But they have you." He smiled faintly. "Maybe, but they need you." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt heavy, not with sorrow this time, but with gratitude, affection, something unspoken that felt almost sacred. Later that evening, we took the children down to the beach, the same one Grace had loved. The sunset spilled gold over the horizon. Lila and Liam chased waves. Leo collected seashells and proudly showed them to his father. I stood a few feet away, watching them, my heart full. Alexander joined me quietly, his hands in his pockets. "You know," he said, "Grace always believed that souls find each other when they're meant to. Maybe she was right." I smiled softly. Maybe she sent me. He turned to me then, really looked at me, and said in a voice barely above a whisper, "If she did, I'll spend the rest of my life thanking her for it." The children came running, breathless and laughing. "Miss Emma, Daddy, look!" Leo held up a small glass bottle. Inside was a rolled piece of paper, old and faded, sealed with wax. "A message in a bottle," he giggled. Alexander knelt, breaking the seal gently. Inside was a note, barely legible from the sea's wear, but enough to read, "To whoever finds this, love never dies. It only changes form. Protect those you cherish, for they are the real treasure." Alexander looked at me, both of us speechless. He whispered, "That handwriting, it's Grace's." The world seemed to still for a moment. The ocean waves hushed, and in the quiet, I felt her warmth, her peace, her blessing. That night, after putting the children to bed, I found Alexander sitting on the terrace, a glass of wine untouched beside him. He looked up as I approached. "You know," he said, "for years, I thought my story ended with loss, that I'd already lived all the love I was ever going to get." He paused, eyes glimmering in the starlight. "But then you came, and somehow, it all began again." I smiled softly, my voice trembling. "I think Grace wanted that." He nodded. "I think so too." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was comforting, like two souls finally resting after a long, endless storm. The next morning, I woke early and walked to the garden. The triplets' laughter drifted from the kitchen. The roses were blooming again, bright red, just like the ones in Grace's favorite vase. Alexander joined me, holding a small box. "What's this?" I asked, curious. He opened it. Inside was a golden locket, delicate, engraved with 3 tiny hearts. When I opened it, I gasped. Inside were 2 photos, one of Grace with the triplets as newborns, and one of me with them now, smiling under the sunlight. On the back, an inscription read, "2 mothers, 1 love, forever protecting 3 souls." My tears fell silently. Alexander took a deep breath. Grace wanted them to have love. I think she'd be proud of what we've built. I looked at him, really looked, and realized something profound. Grace's love hadn't disappeared. It had simply transformed, from one kind of love to another, from one guardian angel to another caretaker, from loss to rebirth. Months passed. The triplets grew stronger each day. Leo learned to whistle. Lila painted her first sunset. Liam planted a tiny tree by the fountain and named it Hope. And every night, before bed, they'd all ask me to tell the same story, the one about the nanny who did the impossible. I'd smile and begin softly. Once upon a time, there was a house filled with sadness, until love walked through the door. Their eyelids would flutter shut, and I'd whisper a silent prayer, for Grace, for Alexander, for the miracle that bound us all. One evening, as I stood on the balcony watching the stars, Alexander came beside me. The air was still, warm, filled with peace. He reached for my hand, gently, like asking permission. I didn't pull away. He smiled. "Do you believe in second chances?" I looked up at him and whispered, "I do now." And beneath the same sky that once held nothing but storm clouds, I realized something extraordinary. Sometimes miracles aren't about curing illness or defying science. Sometimes they're about hearts finding their way back to life. And for me, for us, that miracle had already happened.